Hello, I'm Emily, reporting live for DillyDally News. Today, we have one of the stars of the new hit show Detective Pikachu, who's here to share some breaking news about the Pokemon franchise with us. It's Bulbasaur. Bulbasaur, what do you have to tell us about the Pokemon franchise and the direction that they're going in the coming years?
Bulbasaur. Bulbasaur.
Fascinating. And now to Dylan with the weather.
It's cloudy. What? It's cloudy.
Well, yeah, but like...
No, I mean, look at it. It's like...
Look, I put you in...
Hey, welcome to the DillyDally WeChat. Today we're talking about Detective Pikachu. We just saw this a few days ago, and this is like our 5th attempt to try to record this, so hopefully it works. First impressions. Tell me what you thought before going into it.
So I was a little concerned. I played Pokemon a little bit as a kid, but I never really went all out like some people did. I kind of just created my own secret army of Meowths who were not very good. So I didn't quite have the nostalgia factor that I think some people like you did. But even I was a little concerned about the idea of Ryan Reynolds playing Pikachu.
Right.
And I went into it feeling a little skeptical, but not like entirely ready to discount the entire show. You know, I wanted to give it a chance. I love Pokemon. I love mysteries, so just tried to go in with as open a mind as possible. And what about you?
Yeah, I think for me, I had a little bit of concern about Ryan Reynolds being Pikachu. I was kind of like, oh, I mean, he's funny as Deadpool, so I guess like the whole movie's just gonna feel like Pikapool. Is kind of what people were saying. And
I guess that's better than Dead Pika.
Yeah, or Dead Chew. I thought it was gonna be funny, but I thought it was just gonna be like a lot of
Not the right kind of comedy.
right. But you know, I think like most, like you said, nostalgic people that kind of grew up with it, I think our biggest concern was that it was gonna look bad because it's just, you know, the first trailer we saw the designs of the Pokemon and it was like some of them just looked scary. Like I remember people were like Lickitung and Mr. Mime and Jigglypuff especially were like, ugh, I don't want to see those. But surprisingly, like that actually ended up not being a thing when we watched it. Like the designs of the Pokemon were the best part of the movie, in my opinion.
And I'll even say, like, by the end of the movie, I was a complete and total believer in Ryan Reynolds as Detective Pikachu. And I don't want to say any more than that, but I think if you go and see it, you'll understand why they chose Ryan Reynolds, because it makes a lot of sense.
Jumping forward just a little bit, I think you've kind of mentioned this idea of nostalgia. The cool thing about this movie is that it does play on the nostalgia factor. Like, there's this sign that has this, like, Japanese, like, lettering that actually is just the word oak. And then, you know, in the first scene, there's a character wearing a backpack and, like, a baseball cap and everything. Like, there's stuff like that.
There are several throwbacks to the original theme song.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, oh, for sure. The female kind of sidekick or whatever, her partner Pokemon is a Psyduck, and she almost looks like she could play Misty. Like, there's a lot of stuff like that, but I think what's cool about it is that all of that feels like just extra. Like, the movie itself was still really good. I think most of the actors did a really good job. Going into it, everybody kind of thought Ryan Reynolds was going to carry it, and in a sense, I think Ryan Reynolds is the best part of the movie. But at the same time, that's like saying, I mean, like, Pikachu is the best part of the Pokemon anime. So, like, of course.
Pikachu is the best part of Detective Pikachu?
Right, exactly. And so, you know, it's his show.
Also, Pikachu is the best part of the movie?
Yeah. How dare I?
Bulbasaur had a lot of screen time, actually, which I was really happy about. So the story starts out with Tim. And he gets a phone call saying that his dad has been in some sort of accident, and so he's going to Rhyme City, where Pokemon and humans live in harmony, as opposed to other parts of the world where the Pokemon live in the wild. And so he's going to basically say his goodbyes to his dad, and to, I guess, pick up any things from his apartment that he might want. But when he gets there, he runs into Pikachu, and Pikachu was his dad's partner Pokemon, and he's like, wait, there's a mystery here. Like, we need to figure out what happened to your dad. And so that launches into the whole story.
I think the only part that we don't know from the trailer is that his dad's been in an accident and he's assumed to be dead. Like, I think that's maybe the only thing they didn't mention in the trailer. Kind of jumping back to the designs of the Pokemon, I know you've mentioned a couple times that you have one small issue with the designs of them.
So overall, I really think that the Pokemon look great. There's not a single Pokemon in the movie that I think doesn't look great. They maintain the integrity of the original cartoon and the games while also bringing them to life and making them look really realistic.
Yeah, like Pikachu, his facial expressions are like spot on with the anime. Like he's
they
so
gave
expressive.
So much variety to Pikachu's little face,
and he's got like wrinkles and stuff at times that really work. Charizard looks like Charizard, but also really like rough and gruff, like a dragon, and it's super cool.
My only thing that I would have liked to have been a little bit different, I think some of the Pokemon were a little too large. And I understand why they did it. I think if you think about the show, a lot of the Pokemon are around the same size.
Yeah.
And so I think they wanted some more size variety, and so like they made Bulbasaur very large. Bulbasaur is probably the size, like, bigger than a cow.
A cow? Really? Was he that big?
Yeah.
He's pretty big.
You could have ridden on one of those Bulbasaurs.
That's true.
Whereas, like, in the original anime, Bulbasaur, before he evolves, is about the same size as Pikachu.
Right.
And he's definitely way bigger than Pikachu in the movie. So I think, like, I understand why they did it. I think they wanted some visual variety in terms of Pokemon size. And don't get me wrong, like, Bulbasaur looked great. I just personally would have liked a smaller, cuter Bulbasaur. Psyduck was also...
Oh, Psyduck was huge.
Psyduck was really big.
He's very big.
Like, Bulbasaur, I think it makes sense to have be that big. But Psyduck was, like, not even close to duck size.
Yeah. I think the biggest one that I kind of didn't even notice until after you pointed it out was Snorlax was so tiny. Like,
yeah.
Snorlax was one of the smallest ones.
No, he wasn't one of the smallest
Well, in comparison
ones,
to like big
like,
Pokemon,
Snorlax is supposed to be huge.
he was like he was like as tall as I was, basically.
Snorlax is like, in the show, he's huge, but in the movie, like, I mean, he was big, but he was maybe the size of, would you say, like a grizzly bear or something?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I mean, the whole idea is that he's this kind of mammoth-sized, mountain-dwelling Pokemon, and it did not look that way.
But if you get past a few of the size issues, like, the whole visual of all the Pokemon and the different, like, their different skin and fur textures and everything, it all looked really realistic, but also still maintaining the integrity of the nostalgia.
Yeah, well, I think they did a really good job with like the environmental aspects of everything too. Like the Pokemon, whenever you were in a forest, there were a bunch of like mushroom Pokemon, and then when you were in the city, there were a lot of like Snorlax and Machamps and like all these kind of urban Pokemon. Even the Snorlax isn't really an urban Pokemon, but he was asleep in the middle of the street, kind of blocking traffic, which was like a funny idea. But I think they did a really good job placing things in the right area. The other thing, so like that's a positive thing of like how great they were designed. One thing that we've kind of discussed that we think negatively impacted how much time they probably spent designing the Pokemon is there were quite a few editing mishaps throughout the movie, and they don't really like take away from the experience, but it was just kind of funny to see this like brilliantly designed movie just have these like small things that like, wow, how did you not fix that? Like that's crazy.
There's like, well, it's hard to say what they were without giving anything away, but there's a scene where they're like running through the forest and some bad stuff is happening. Because why would you be running through a forest otherwise? Right. And it just like, it's so obvious that it was green screened. But, they spent the time on the Pokemon, and I will say I would rather them have spent that time on the Pokemon than on something like that,
oh, for
I guess.
sure.
But a 10-year-old kid is not going to notice it. So like if you're taking your child to see it, like they're not gonna care.
Yeah. Which on that note, talking about taking your 10-year-old kid,
Pikachu does a big cuss.
yeah, so we're both adults. Pikachu says 2 swear words, and like it didn't really matter, but like we both were a little off put by like this cute Pokemon like saying 2 swear words,
Yeah,
and like
and
it's a film that your kids are gonna go to and that kind of thing. It
Yeah,
is a little off putting.
well, and I feel like I wouldn't have minded it as much had it been one of the other characters. Like, had
Right.
it been Tim or, like,
One of
even
the bad
one of the
guys.
villains or something like that saying a swear word, it would have been like, it's a kid's movie. I mean, it is and it isn't a kid's movie. You know, like, I'm sure they made it knowing that, like, a large portion of their audience would be people our age coming in.
Right.
But it was a little off-putting to see Pikachu saying bad words. And it wasn't like Pikachu dropped the F-bomb.
Yeah.
There are no F-bombs. It is rated PG, but, Pikachu doesn't cuss. Pikachu just says, Pika Pika.
It is what it is, and like I don't think it takes away from the movie, but it was definitely like both times that it happened, we were like, that's
Well,
weird.
especially considering, like, there's an adorable child, like, sitting just a couple rows in front of us.
Right. So now that we've kind of discussed all of the small, editing and the designs of everything, the kind of small tier things, let's get into more of the nitty gritty of what we're talking about. So kind of the overall impressions that we have of the movie as a whole, of the plot and everything. I personally feel like, and I kind of said this as soon as the movie ended, it wasn't like this groundbreaking, earth-shattering thing. Like the movie ended, and I was like, you know what? That felt good. That was fun. Like I honestly think the thing that the movie did best was, as someone who played the games when I was a little kid and has been playing them for the last, like 15 years of my life, since the first and second generation games came out, it was this very cool moment of like, wow, it's real. The world exists. The plot was good. It was fun to watch, but that is really what kind of kept me engaged in the whole movie. And so I think if it wasn't a Pokemon movie, it would have been just as enjoyable to watch in terms of plot. And I still would have been like, yeah, I didn't waste money coming here. Like, this is a fun time. But the fact that it involves that nostalgia is really what kind of sold me to it.
I think overall it's a movie that's worth watching, even if you aren't necessarily a huge Pokemon fan. I think the plot is engaging. It's, for the most part, a well thought out plot. It's not a super, like, change your life kind of movie, but I mean, it's a Pokemon movie. We weren't expecting something that was gonna, like, revolutionize the movie industry.
Right.
The plot is complex enough that it has some twists and turns that keep you on your toes throughout the entire movie. I do feel like it kind of unfolded at a good pace. So there'd be like a single twist and you'd be like, whoa, that's cool. And then there'd be another twist and you'd say, oh, well, like, that's cool too.
Right.
And then you get to a point in the movie and you're like, well, we've seen everything that there is. And then there's another twist.
Right.
And so it kind of does a good job of keeping you on your toes the whole time. The Pokemon, like, if you're a Pokemon fan, that's just going to add to the experience.
So yeah, overall, we really enjoyed it. I think it's worth going to see, especially if you're a Pokemon fan at any level, any capacity. I will say the biggest crime of the movie, not enough Eevee. Barely any Eevee. But what do you do? Well, everybody, thank you so much for watching. This has been We Chat Detective Pikachu. Emily, do you have anything you want to say to everybody before we go?
No, but Bulbasaur does.
Oh.
The Fitness Gram Pacer test is a multi-stage aerobic capacity test.
We're just sitting in
Thanks.
silence because she knows that I'm going to edit in Bulbasaur talking later. I think overall we'll probably give this movie, I don't know, what do you say?
7 out of 9 tails.
You're ridiculous.